All right. Well, thanks to all of you for joining us for the next half hour to talk about some of the behaviors that a lot of job seekers exhibit that really don't help their cause. There are a lot of things that people in a job search do that in many cases hinder their chances of getting more interview, that hold them back from getting visibility that they deserve, and prevent them from landing their next job quicker. The NSE&G organization is all about the tactics and strategies that it takes to land your next job faster. And so we're going to focus today on just a few of the examples. And I can tell you, I have a lot of them, but I'm only going to share about 8 or 9 today that are things that a lot of job seekers overlook, that they could approach differently in their job search, and as a result, get better outcomes. So before we get into the material, let me just cover a couple quick things really fast. For those of you that may not be members of NSE&G, I encourage you to do so. The membership is free. There are over 12,700 members that are in this group today. We've been averaging more than one member landing a job for the last 7 years. When you join, you get 2 free webinar recordings from me, and they're going to sit in your My NSE&G webpage because every member has their own page. And of course, there's all kinds of online events and opportunities to share information and get introduced into companies that you can't get into on your own. The free membership is on our website at nsenginc.com. You can click on the free membership and just fill out the brief information. It'll take you about 30 seconds, and then you'll be assigned your own page and the opportunity to start integrating, the things that we talk about into your plans. I also encourage you to join our LinkedIn group. It's a very active group of the 12,000 plus members that are in NSE&G. We've got about 9,000 of them that are members in our LinkedIn group. And what you're going to find is that there are from time to time advertised positions that are, sitting in these pages, along with an opportunity to share your background with others in the group, network with them. And of course, everybody who is a member of the LinkedIn group has a profile that you can then look at and see whether or not this is somebody that you'd like to start networking with. Also available to you are a huge portfolio of recordings. I've got 20 on-demand webinar recordings. Each one's about 90 minutes in length on all different aspects of job search. I urge you to go to the website, take a look at these. You may find some that are addressing some of the problems you seem to be facing. It might be age discrimination. It might be your resume and LinkedIn profile. Maybe it's interviewing. Maybe it's your ability to leverage the LinkedIn profile and many other things. So these are all available to you, as are 3 hour workshop recordings, including my trademarked What the Hell approach to job search. And the concept behind this 3 hour recording is, what the hell do you have to lose by doing things that other job seekers simply are not doing? The name of the game in job search is visibility, and that means you've got to find ways to stand out from your competition. It's particularly true today because there's anywhere from 200, 300, 400 people that are applying to every decent online job that's out there. When you've got those kinds of odds working against you, you've got to do things that make you get noticed and get you the visibility that's going to ultimately result in some interviews. There's also a 3 hour session on how to maximize the value of LinkedIn, and that really is cut into 2 sections. The first one is how to search engine optimize your profile. The second one is how to use the platform. Too many people don't really get the most out of LinkedIn simply because there's so many features in it that many people just don't know about. The third recording is on how to really develop and ultimately implement an effective job search plan. And too many people jump right into their job search. They start answering as many online ads as they can, and it's just not a very efficient use of your time. For those of you that want to be alerted whenever I post something on LinkedIn, simply go to my LinkedIn profile, click on the bell, and then you'll be alerted of every time I post something. I post about 2 times a week on job search related perspectives of mine. And at the same time, if you go into LinkedIn and up here into the search bar and insert there hashtag Marty Gilbert, you'll then see a listing of a lot of the LinkedIn posts that I've made over the course of several years. One thing I do want to mention to all of you, and this should be of interest to everybody who happens to be currently unemployed and in a job search. The U.S. government sets aside a very significant amount of money every year. It's as a result of the WIOA grant, the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act. This is money they set aside every year for job seekers that are currently unemployed. Now, I partner with a company that is an approved WIOA training company. This is important because those funds are set aside for job seekers. You can, apply for a grant. Okay. Microtrain happens to be one of those companies that can provide that training for people that live in the state of Illinois. Now, what's really nice about this program is that because the money's already been set aside by the federal government, you as a job seeker can apply for a grant, and companies like Microtrain can help you make that application come to life. And if you're approved, you will then be able to be allocated what could be anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000 worth of free training. Microtrain can give that to you for free because they're getting paid by Uncle Sam. So for those of you that live in Illinois, I urge you to take a look at the website. There's a special landing page that's been set up for NSENG members. It's microtrain.net/NSENG. You can also reach out to Dennis Muller, their founder, and Dennis works very closely with us on the program. And here are some of the kinds of training. It's not all of them, but these are some of the kinds of things that Microtrain provides training for. Now, for those of you that don't live in the state of Illinois, you have the same opportunities with WIOA approved training companies that are located in your state. So what I encourage you to do is go and do a Google search, put in WIOA training companies for Philadelphia, Houston, Phoenix, wherever you might live, and you'll get a listing of several companies that are WIOA approved, and you'll be able to work with them to apply for grants. And then when your grant is approved, you'll be given a certain amount of funds that can be used and allocated to training that that company can then provide to you. Now, we've had a few hundred people in NSENG take advantage of these training programs, and on average, they've gotten free training that normally would cost about $8,000. So let's get right into some of the big mistakes that a lot of job seekers make. Mistake number one, a lot of job seekers don't take the time to differentiate themselves. Okay. And when you've got 200 to 400 people applying to an individual job, differentiation is a huge issue that you've got to be able to get across when you're talking about your particular skills. Companies are not making offers to people that are just average. They want people that are exceptional. They want people that have a competitive edge over the other candidates that they're also pursuing. They want to know that you're uniquely qualified for the job that they're looking to fill. They want to know what is it that's unusual about your background? And, have you done what we need in this job description? This is where storytelling is such a huge part of any job search, because what good stories will do, whether you do it in writing, whether you do it in interviews, but particularly in emails, you've got to be able to tell, what is the proof behind the claims that you make. So this is a really critical piece. And of course, another issue is the mindset of a hiring company. They are very risk averse. They eliminate 90% of the candidates right up front because they represent potential risk in the hiring process. So what's an example of a risky candidate? A risky candidate is somebody who doesn't come from our industry. This is why I always encourage job seekers to pursue companies initially that are in the space where you've been, in the industry where you've been, in the vertical markets where you've been, because it's so easy for companies to eliminate someone because they don't come from healthcare, or they don't come from IT, or they don't come from manufacturing. And whether you've got, 5 years or 25 years of experience, um, the easiest way to find yourself, being, viewed as a favorable candidate is if you can connect the dots between your background and what they're looking for. So here's just a couple examples of how some, individuals that I've coached have differentiated themselves. Here's one for a marketing individual. I'm a marketing strategist who's also carried a sales bag. This is significant because most marketing people never go into sales. And for those people that have, they have a much better understanding for the audience that they're trying to create marketing programs to address that will create opportunities for the sales organization. So if you can connect the dots between sales and marketing and bring those experiences together, it makes you far more valuable in the eyes of the hiring company than somebody who has spent all their career only in marketing. Here's another example, a hospital data and analytics expert who delivers healthcare performance improvement. Again, somebody who knows and understands healthcare, but somebody who has that data and analytics background that separates them from other individuals. Number three, a Fortune 500 executive who has spent time as an entrepreneurial revenue growth individual. This is important because so many people that have grown up in Fortune 500 or Fortune 1000 companies have a very, limited view of what it's like to be accountable in a smaller business environment. And so if you've, had an opportunity to participate in both, you have an advantage over people that are looking to get into some of the mid-sized companies. A change management leader for mergers, acquisitions, and stagnant businesses. Again, one of the things that every company wants to do is grow. And one of the ways that companies grow is through mergers and acquisitions. And so, somebody who can not only come into an organization and help make some, critical changes to enable that, but if they've done it through mergers and acquisitions or companies that are just sitting there not growing at all, it's a big differential advantage. Last one here is a channel partner champion who expands your sales reach. The fact is, so many companies can't only rely on direct sales. Many companies today are selling online, or they're selling through third-party companies, dealers, distributors, value-added resellers. These are all, efforts to find more ways to get to the company that they want to sell products to. Mistake number two, too many people they stop after they hit submit to a job that they're trying to apply to. And when you do that, you have effectively said, I'm okay with 200 to 1 odds, 400 to 1 odds if you do nothing else. What you need to think about is increasing your odds. And one way to do that is by conducting filtered searches on LinkedIn. You can look for people by geographic location, by title, by industry, by company that they currently work for. The filtering process on LinkedIn is so powerful. A lot of people just don't know how to use it. Another great feature is connections of. For anybody that you are connected to on LinkedIn, a first degree connection, you can do a filtered search on all of their connections. I'm a good example of this. I've got 30,000 LinkedIn connections. Nobody can take the time, nor will LinkedIn allow you to look at all 30,000 of my LinkedIn connections. But you can go and do filtered searches on my connections if you know how to use the connections of feature. Again, you can go through anybody's connections who is a first degree connections of yours and look and find people that work in certain companies in certain geographic areas that have certain titles or that are working in certain industries. This is hugely beneficial to anybody in a job search because whether you've got 100 connections or 20,000, they're of no use if you aren't taking advantage of the fact that these people are connected to. And as I said, I've got 30,000 LinkedIn connections, but I can tell you with a lot of confidence, I probably don't know 27,000 of these people. But that's okay because every one of them brings potential value to me, either because of who they are or who they know. And this is what you need to keep in mind with LinkedIn. It's just such a great conduit to more companies and more individuals in those firms. And one of the things that, you always should be striving to do is to get referrals into a company. But if you don't have any kind of a network that can get you into a company, then you should be directly emailing people in those firms that are of interest to you, whether they have a job or not. You should be emailing the hiring manager's boss. Email, all of the peers. So let's just look at a quick example. If you're interested in a finance job, and let's say the hypothetical hiring manager might be the VP of finance. Okay, well, you'd want to obviously email that individual, but I wouldn't limit it to that. I would also, email the VP of sales, the VP of marketing, the VP of operations, the VP of product development. If you want, you can send one to the VP of talent acquisition or human resources, but that is the least important person in the hiring process. People in internal talent acquisition teams don't have any jobs. They don't have jobs. They don't have any budget. They don't influence hiring decisions. And they don't even have a seat at the table when it's time to hire. The people that have the power are the hiring manager and their peers, because those are the people that are going to be instrumental in the interviewing process and ultimately have the loudest voice when it comes to selecting the chosen individual. You can also get interviews even when you've rejected by the ATS. And I have coached so many job seekers who get rejected within 15 or 20 minutes, and I'm still able to get them interviews because we go around that piece of software. You got to get to the right people. These are the right people. And we'll cover very shortly email programs and how instrumental they can be in getting you more interviews. Mistake number 3. If you spend more than 5 hours a week answering online ads, then you're doing a lot of wasted time. Great example is that I'm sure some of you may have children that played soccer. And when kids are really young and they're playing this game, what do? Everybody chases after that shiny object, the soccer ball. And so you've got 20 kids running here. When the ball gets kicked over here, they're all racing over to the ball over on the other side of the field. The same is true of a lot of job seekers. They chase after that shiny object. It's the online ad, and it's not a good use of your time. And that's why I say not more than 5 hours a week. Think about this. This comes from the Department of Labor and Statistics. Only 15% of all the hiring that takes place in today's market is because somebody answered an online ad. So much of the hiring doesn't happen because people answered an ad on LinkedIn, on Career Builder, on Indeed, or any of these other sites. It's because 70% of the jobs are filled through employee referrals. And companies are willing to warrant, they're able to substantiate paying their employees $1,000 to $2,000 if you recommend somebody and end up getting hired, because many of them don't want to advertise anymore. They found a far more effective way, because the best people to help find and recruit good new employees are the people that currently work inside the company. So a better use of your time is to always be researching more and more companies. LinkedIn is a great resource for this. I can tell you, I coach so many people on how to really use the platform to build out a target company list. And once you do that, you identify the industries where you've been. You list out all the companies that are in those industries, whether they are Fortune 500s or companies that are $50 million in annual revenue, because some of the greatest opportunities are going to come from companies you've never heard of. And you can find them if you know how to use LinkedIn. Once you've identified the industries and the companies, then you want to identify 3 to 5 people in LinkedIn who currently work at those firms, because you want to get information on how is the organization that you want to work in, how's it structured? What does that org chart look like? These do not have to be senior people inside a company. You just want to have a conversation. Now, you can get introduced into these people through your network, or you can send, cold, LinkedIn invitations to people. Just send it to enough so that you can get one conversation. That's all it takes, because one person can open you up to all kinds of inside information about a company that you otherwise would never be able to get on your own. Network into these kinds of people, and don't be afraid to cold email, people in companies. Now, there's two different opportunities that are available to you. One are companies that currently have advertised jobs, and the other are companies that are of interest to you, but they don't have advertised positions. You need to go after both camps because some of the greatest opportunities are not advertised. And the fact is, when you go after the hidden job market, your odds are no longer 200 or 300 to 1. In many cases, they're 1 to 1. You may be the only person pursuing that company because everybody's going after that shiny object. So cold emailing people when you don't have a networking connection into a company, nothing wrong with that. And you've got nothing to lose. Mistake number 4, you got to pursue companies that don't have advertised jobs. And here's why. Okay. The hidden job market is the lion's share of the opportunities that are out there. Advertised jobs are relatively small when it comes to hiring. And let's face it, external recruiters represent a tiny, tiny percentage of all the hiring that takes place. Why? Because most companies can't afford to pay anywhere from 25 to 33% of your first year's salary as compensation to that external recruiter who's going to bring to them qualified candidates. It just doesn't, the math doesn't add up, and companies can't afford to do that for every position. And that's why good recruiting companies, and I'm talking about, some of the top tier executive search firms, who are going to demand, 33% of your first year salary. This is why most of these firms are only going after VP and C-suite positions, because companies can't continually go after, the mass number of positions that they need to fill by using an external recruiter. Mistake number 5. If you don't write emails, okay, and I use emails and cover letters, synonymously, but what I really mean are emails. If you're not writing them, you're missing out on a huge opportunity. 62% of job seekers today don't write them, whether they have an advertised position they're going after, or they're going after companies that, that aren't, currently advertising. The problem is that the majority of hiring managers want to see them. Why? They want to see how you communicate. They want to know how persuasive you are. If you can tell them the most important things in an email that would take them a much greater amount of effort by looking through just your resume and your LinkedIn profile, you've just, done them a huge favor. The advantages of writing these emails, again, whether it's an advertised position or not, it makes you stand out from everybody else because we see that a very small percentage of people are actually doing them. It creates a great first impression because it shows that you're enthusiastic about the role and that you're proactive. It's the one and only time you get to control the story before you meet with somebody face to face. A resume doesn't allow that, neither does a LinkedIn profile, because there's typically so much content. You're asking the reader to read the 2 or 3 pages of my resume, and then you decide whether or not, from canvassing my document, if there's some things in there that you think warrant having an interview with me, as opposed to sending an email that highlights maybe 3 key things in your background that are examples of things that you've done that are pertinent to that job. It connects the job requirements to your achievements. And there's a real skill to being able to do that without getting too wordy. And I'm going to show you an example in a few slides. It demonstrates how well you can write. It opens up doors that otherwise would remain closed to you. An email can easily be forwarded, not only to other individuals inside that company, but what oftentimes happens is that you may email a company, they may not feel that you're the right candidate, or they may not have a job for you. But there's nothing stopping them from sending it over to 3 or 4 of their friends that work in other companies with a simple FYI, here's somebody that I've come across. If you happen to be looking for a marketing leader or somebody in sales, here's somebody you may want to consider. And it enables your network to help you. When you provide these emails to people in your network as a way for them to introduce you to people inside a company of interest to you, you've just saved them a lot of time and effort because they don't have to do much of any writing. They can take your email, put a note on top of it, forward it on to the person that you want to get introduced to, and now you've made it easy for them to say yes. Mistake number 6, you got to search engine optimize your profile, and too many people don't take the time to do that. You got to create that great, first impression, but this area, the headline area in a LinkedIn profile is so critical. It's a hot spot. It gets a lot of emphasis when people are trying to decide whether or not this is somebody we want to have a conversation with. And notice what every one of these folks have done. They've put keyword after keyword after keyword. Now, some of you might be asking, how do I know what keywords are the ones for me? Easy exercise. Grab 4 or 5 job search descriptions that are typically jobs that you would pursue. Grab a highlighter, start highlighting those keywords that seem to pop up in the key job requirements, not the qualifications. That's the least important part of a job description. You know whether or not you qualify for the job, but the written part of the job description that describes the key skills and experiences that the individuals need to have to be considered are the most important part of any job description. See if there's keywords or phrases that seem to be cropping up in job descriptions from one to another to another to another. Those are going to become your keywords. And then LinkedIn allows you 220 characters. You can see you can put a lot of information up in here, within the 220 character limitation. And those are easy ways in which you're going to get more keyword hits. There are people going into the back end of LinkedIn as hiring managers. They're plugging in the key skills. The people that are going to get phone screens are the people that have the most keyword hits. And if you don't have enough information up here, or if you just have your past title, you're never going to capture their attention. And the chances of you getting that initial interview are going to be diminished significantly. Mistake number 7. In the About section of the LinkedIn profile, that's further down, just slightly underneath your headline, where you put together a summary of your background, the first 2 words are critical: contact and your email address. If you don't have that email address visible right away, even if you have it hidden at the bottom of that section, it may never get seen. But if you don't include this, then the only way a company who might be interested in your background is going to be able to get in contact with you is they have to connect with you on LinkedIn. And a lot of people don't want to do that. So if you don't put this information real visibly up front, you are in effect eliminating yourself from potential chances that could otherwise be coming your way. So again, easy change to make. And it's something that can make a huge difference in the outcome of opportunities that you want to pursue. Mistake number 8. Okay, this is an example of an email. This particular example is to be sent out to somebody after you've had a job interview. So just by way of example, in follow-up to our interview yesterday, I wanted to thank you for your time. I believe my experience aligns well with the role, and as a reminder, here are a few examples from my background that I think align with the key requirements of the job. And then list out the 3 categories, and under them, give a proof point. Not more than 2 lines. You don't want to get real wordy. But the combination of doing these kinds of things is what makes emails so effective. Notice I've bolded the key categories. These are the most important requirements of the particular position that this client of mine was pursuing. And then very briefly provide some element of experience that addresses each one of them. These are the kinds of emails also, because you're not going to just send them to follow-up of interviews that you have as reminders. This is the kind of format you want to use when you're applying to jobs. When you're sending out cold emails to companies, when you're providing your network with an email that they can then simply put a one-liner on top of, that they can then forward on to a hiring manager and or somebody inside a company that's of interest to you, this kind of format works. Trust me, it's very, very effective. I've seen so many of my clients implement it, and they start getting interviews that they otherwise weren't getting. Because, like I said earlier, a resume and a LinkedIn profile have a lot of content, and you're asking the reader to do a lot of heavy lifting. But this very quickly tells them, I'm just going to give you a few examples, things from my past that I think are pertinent to the job. And by the way, they happen to be three of the most important requirements of the job. And I'm going to tell you what I've done in each one of them. If you take this approach, you're going to get a lot more success. This is one of the ways that you can get rejected by an applicant tracking system and still get interviews, because you're going to send it to three, four, five different people inside a company to get the visibility you want, because all you need is one of them to do the right thing, and that's to take your email and send it over to the hiring manager. The last mistake I see a lot of job seekers do is they take a very cautious approach to their job search. Now is not the time to be careful and cautious. Now is the time to be experimental. Now is the time to separate yourself from everybody else. Now is the time to consider doing some things that are rather unorthodox that other job seekers aren't doing. This is what my what the hell approach to job search is all about. I got that trademark from the U.S. Patent Department for this approach. I've created 13 moves that you can implement tomorrow that will get you a lot more time and attention with companies that you want to get, engaged with. And it's through these unorthodox approaches that will get you some very significant results. Don't accept no from an ATS or from an AI bot. They don't get a vote in the hiring process unless you enable them. Going around them gets you what you want. So email hiring managers directly or go through your network to get to them. Here's a few more things that relate back to taking chances. Don't be afraid to offer at some point in time, if you think it makes sense, to do project work for the company. So many companies are taking so long to make hiring decisions. The fact is that it's not unusual for 4 or more months to transpire before somebody ultimately gets offered a job. In the meantime, you can go back to a company and say, if you guys haven't yet decided and you're not sure whether or not this is a position that you're going to fill immediately, if there's work that needs to get done and it's not getting done, I'd be happy to take it on. Now, you're not going to do it for free. You can give them a statement of work if that's something they're open to. It starts to bring income into your household. But if things work out well, you take on a project and they like the work you've done, it can easily migrate into a full-time role. If there are companies you spent a fair amount of time interviewing with, you went through 2, 3, or more rounds of interviews and you just didn't get the job, don't be surprised if they never hired anybody. Nothing wrong with going back to the company that rejected you and just saying, I just touching base, was wondering if you're still looking to fill that position, and maybe, you take on some project work, introduce the concept. The seventh one is, post on LinkedIn to draw more attention to your profile. You've got to be getting people viewing your background. LinkedIn makes it so easy for you. Okay. It's not just a matter of answering a lot of online ads. It's constantly connecting with more and more people, particularly people you don't know. But like I said earlier, every LinkedIn connection provides potential value to you because of who they are or who they know. And when you start to, join more and more LinkedIn groups, and you can join up to 100 of them, every one of you should join at least 20 that are in your space, in your industry, or in your job function. You can post things onto those LinkedIn groups. And when people see things that you've written or that you've commented on, and they like what you've said, what are they going to do? They're going to go back and check out your background. More and more profile views get more and more people knowing who you are and what value you bring. And that's the name of the game here. You don't have the advantage of running 30-second TV spots, multiple times a day. And the fact is that LinkedIn is that opportunity for you to be able to get people taking notice of who you are, what you can do, and why you're somebody that people should be having conversations with. So before we close it out, just a couple quick reminders. If any of you are considering the possibility of working with a coach, this is the biggest piece of what I do. Feel free to email me if you want to have a free exploratory conversation. You can email me at martygilbert1@gmail.com. We can, take a little bit of time and talk about your search and how I think I can help you. And again, if you've not yet joined NSENG, take advantage of our free membership, and then ultimately you will get your own My NSENG webpage. Send me a LinkedIn connection. Tell me that you came to the session, and I'll give you access to my 30,000 LinkedIn connections. I know for a fact when people connect with me, I'm giving them access to at least 30 million people. How is that? How is it with one connection you can get visibility of 30 million people? Because my 30,000 LinkedIn connections have on average more than 1,000 LinkedIn connections. The simple math says 30,000 people. And second degree connections are also extremely valuable. So the more and more people you connect with on LinkedIn, the more visibility you're going to get when you start doing LinkedIn searches. Join our LinkedIn group if you haven't already. View my videos and podcast interviews. I do a lot of interviews from time to time, and I post them up on the website. Take a look at the 20 webinar recordings, the 3 workshop recordings. These have helped a lot of people to shorten their job search. And of course, if you have an interest in talking with me about the coaching that I provide, please don't hesitate to reach out. Again, thank you all for joining us today. I hope you found it beneficial. If you've got questions, please feel free to reach out to me. And I do want to mention one thing, that over the next week or so, I'm going to be introducing an AI chatbot into the NSENG website where anybody can come in and ask questions. I have uploaded to this AI tool all of my content, my presentations, my interviews, my posts on LinkedIn, and I've educated it on my perspectives on LinkedIn, my perspectives on interviewing, on conducting job search techniques and tactics. So everything that I've done in my past, this AI bot now possesses. And so when you ask a question, it's going to give you an answer as if you were sitting across the table from me. So keep an eye out for that on the website. I will send out a message to let people know, when it does get enacted. But I think that's something that's going to be really helpful to a lot of you. Again, any questions, feel free to reach out to me, and all the best to you in your job search. Take care.